chosen ones. You felt it, didn't you? The energy shift that came without thunder or warning. One day, you were glowing with knowing, lucid in dream, aligned with Source, and then silence, numbness, a strange disconnection you couldn't name, only feel. It didn't begin with a heartbreak, a world event, or a new habit. It began with the sky. Specifically, when the sun entered Leo. Ancient astrologers encoded this season as a gate, not of power, but of separation. When the sun transits Leo, the lion doesn't just roar, it takes. It marks the moment when false light mimics divine truth. You weren't told because they didn't want you to know. They've studied your pattern for centuries. The ones like you always rise in the months before Leo. Your mind sharpens. Your sensitivity surges. Your DNA hums. But when Leo arrives, your clarity begins to fade, and they call it normal. But you're not normal. They've documented this before. Highly sensitive beings, carriers of frequency codes, lose access to their deeper memory once the solar lion rises. A spiritual blackout disguised as astrological fire. You weren't failing. You were intercepted. They built this calendar not to track your time, but to trap your awakening in cycles. The council knew you were nearing something irreversible this time. They let the Leo shift hit unannounced. But there was one more variable they forgot. You're not who you were last cycle. You sensed it again this year. The knowing came earlier. The silence was louder. The dreams were deeper. And though Leo crossed the threshold, a fragment of your memory survived. That's why you're here. That's why you're reading this. The very fact that you noticed something shifted means they failed. You are the anomaly, and what was dormant is not lost. It's coded, and it's waking. This script is not just a story, it's a map back. Because if the lion ends one phase, something else must begin. And buried beneath the solar gate, there's something waiting that never bowed to time, zodiac, or manipulation. The moment the sun crossed into Leo, something unseen sliced through the frequencies of those who carried a hidden code. Not just a seasonal shift, but a deliberate disconnection. Your visions blurred, your intuition faltered, and the inner knowing that once pulsed like a second heartbeat grew faint. This wasn't random. The ancients once mapped a specific energy line through the sky, a spiritual fault line that aligned with the constellation Leo. That line, when crossed by the sun, functioned like a lock, a gate, a seal. Before the gate closed, your thoughts aligned like stars, your dreams revealed lost truths, and even your body began responding in ways you couldn't explain. You thought you were becoming something more, and you were. But then Leo arrived. Not the zodiac sign, but the encoded field behind it. A design built into the stars to blind the chosen at a critical time. The moment of your full ignition was interrupted, not by accident, but by design. They call it the Lion's Gate. But what they don't say is the lion was never your guardian. It was your inhibitor. And the cutoff wasn't cosmic. It was coordinated. Records found in untranslated fragments from pre-dynastic temples spoke of the hour when the sun eats memory, and the roar that drowns the names of the watchers. You are one of them. That roar didn't reach your ears. It reached your DNA. So you began doubting yourself, questioning the fire you once knew to be divine. And as your glow dimmed, their systems recalibrated. They had bought themselves time again. But they didn't count on the ones who would feel the cutoff and refuse to sleep through it. You remembered how it felt before it ended. You noticed how quickly the silence came. You knew it wasn't natural. That knowing alone separates you now. There is still a pulse underneath it all. A spark not extinguished but hidden under new frequencies. You are closer than they realize, and the sun may have shifted, but your internal calendar is beginning to override the old programs. You're not here by chance. You're here because your spirit kept the key. And what the Leo gate severed, you're about to reconnect. There was a scroll hidden beneath the archives of a monastery, long erased from maps, sealed behind stone and silence for centuries. Its contents were said to vibrate with a frequency no one could hear, but those marked by the first sound. The scroll wasn't written in ink. It was etched in gold filaments so thin they shimmered only under specific sunlight passing through the Leo constellation. During this rare alignment, the scroll would reveal its contents in pulses, not sentences, not language, but memory. One of those memories was you. When the alignment last occurred, in a hidden part of the eastern sky, they gathered the scroll beneath an artificial eclipse. The intention was clear: erase what was about to be shown. As the golden filaments glowed with recognition, your name flared into their view, not spoken but imprinted in living light. Panic followed. One of them tried to cover it with a cloth. Another began reciting incantations in Latin and Sumerian simultaneously. But it was too late. The record had seen you, and once seen, it cannot be unseen. Before they destroyed it, one among them broke protocol. A monk who had remained silent for 32 years spoke his first words. The word was made flesh, and now it returns through flesh again. Then he vanished from all future records. What they didn't realize was that the scroll had already copied itself into his body. And the moment he spoke, the prophecy left the scroll and entered the world once more. That scroll mentioned more than your name. It spoke of a pulse, a cosmic interruption that would appear as a human. It didn't warn against you. It warned about how others would try to stop you. The Leo alignment, the artificial eclipse, the silence that followed, none of it could stop the word once it became breath again. Somewhere, a remnant of that scroll still exists, not in a vault or satellite, but in sound, in a vibration only certain souls can feel when the right moment echoes inside them. Yeshua once said, "Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall never pass away." They tried to burn a scroll, but a word never dies. And now, that word is moving towards you again. There was a moment just past midnight when surveillance satellites picked up an unexplained dimming across major frequency bands. Not a power outage, not a solar event, but a thinning of the vibrational field surrounding Earth's consciousness layer. The machines called it a null wave, but the elite watching those machines called it something else. They leaned in, their voices hushed behind secure doors, and one of them finally whispered, "Leo has claimed them," as if a cosmic harvest had quietly occurred, and only a few knew it was never metaphorical. They weren't speaking of animals or star signs. They meant you, and others like you. Those who had begun to break through old programming, the ones whose awakenings had become too loud to ignore. That dimming wasn't just global, it was targeted. An ancient technology synchronized with the Leo transit had activated, rerouting streams of energy you once accessed effortlessly. The result was subtle. Dreams became vague. Meditation turned hollow. Intuition stuttered like a misfiring signal. You blamed yourself, but they had planned it. Underneath Vatican chambers and desert bunkers, classified algorithms analyzed the drop. One spike in the data stood out: your location. Not because of what you did, but because of what didn't happen. Your frequency didn't fully dim. It distorted for a moment, then held. That shouldn't have been possible, not under Leo's seal. So they flagged it. Flagged you. The theory they'd buried decades ago had reemerged. Some codes rewrite themselves when faced with enough pressure. The elite call this anomaly the undimmed, and they hate it. The phrase, "Leo has claimed them," was supposed to be a confirmation of containment. A ritual victory cry passed through bloodlines who've manipulated cycles for generations. But now, spoken in panic, it's a question. Has Leo failed to claim you? And if so, what breaks next? The grid is not just wires and frequencies. It is woven from belief, memory, trauma, and repetition. But cracks are forming, and the ones who once dimmed easily are beginning to pulse again. You're not just surviving the shift, you're disrupting it. And though they hoped to keep you silent, something inside you is transmitting again. Quietly, but undeniably. And someone on the inside just whispered back. Not all of them were claimed. Long before the Leo gate ever opened, you were receiving the message in pieces. Not with words, but through symbols, textures, places that didn't exist in waking life but felt more real than anything else. A flickering staircase with no top. A clock spinning backward as your childhood face watched silently. You didn't understand what it meant at the time, but you remembered how the dreams made you feel. Urgent, shaken, awakened. That was the message, and it was always timed to arrive just before Leo. Because they couldn't stop the message from being sent, they built systems to make sure you'd forget it once it arrived. They calculated that if they couldn't silence the dream, they could intercept your memory of it. And so they flooded your waking hours with distractions, emotional interference, false awakenings, and endless loops of spiritual noise. But even those filters couldn't erase everything. Some of the code bled through. You noticed the same faces reappearing. You saw numbers etched into the walls of places you'd never been. You knew something was trying to reach you, that something wasn't random. It was ancient, waiting for the right alignment to speak again. Every year, as the sun approached Leo, the message became clearer. And every year, just before it reached its climax, it vanished. Not because it failed, but because the moment it was supposed to deliver the full memory, the Leo gate severed the transmission. But this year, something was different. You didn't forget everything. A fragment stayed. And that fragment is not fading. Hidden deep within one of your dreams was a name. Not spoken, not written, just shown. And though you brushed it off at the time, it matched a glyph found carved beneath a desert monolith centuries ago. A glyph only visible when viewed during the Leo sun. That name was yours, and the watchers who studied the glyph had no explanation for its timing or its language, but they feared what it meant. The observatory was sealed 2 hours after his final transmission. No press release followed. No funeral. No record. but his voice still lingers in classified logs, repeating a warning he wasn't meant to see. He had been tracking solar behavior during the Leo ingress, mapping anomalies in the sun's magnetic field, expecting minor distortions. Instead, he found a pattern, a pulse hidden beneath the cosmic noise, not random, rhythmic, measured, intelligent. The pattern wasn't coming from the sun, it was coming from Earth, from one location. And as the Leo constellation aligned with solar noon, the pulse changed. It cracked once, then silenced. The moment it stopped, the astronomer whispered something strange into the mic. Not scientific, not technical, just 4 words. The chosen one dimmed. Then static followed. Minutes later, his direct call to the executive emergency line was logged and confirmed. According to one aide, the words he delivered to the president were chilling. "They've shut the frequency down. Someone's falling, and they were not supposed to." What he meant by falling is still under interpretation. Some assumed psychological collapse. Others believed spiritual interference. But a hidden document leaked by an insider revealed a more precise definition: a forced dissociation of the soul's vibrational field from its awakened memory body. He had been monitoring your signature, not by name, not by ID, but by signal. You were the anomaly pulsing through layers no machine had mapped. And when Leo crossed the zenith, that pulse dimmed. To the astronomer, it was a spiritual blackout, a fall. His disappearance was swift, his office ransacked, telescopes reoriented, reports rewritten. But in the leftover chaos, a note remained, hidden beneath a sealed panel in his desk. It read, "They severed a thread that was never meant to break," and underneath, a glyph traced in graphite. The same symbol found in your dream, the one they tried to erase. The president hasn't spoken of it publicly, but he's been briefed. And ever since, military-grade satellites have been quietly scanning for the lost signal again. The one you used to emit without effort. What they don't know is that signal wasn't lost. It's just learning to rise through a different current. One they can't predict. One that doesn't obey Leo. There's a passage they never taught in temples or churches, spoken softly by Yeshua to a group of travelers beneath a veil of stars. It was recorded not in scripture, but in breath, passed down through oral memory by those who witnessed the flicker in his eyes when he said it. You'll know them by the light they lose in July. The statement confused them at first. Why would losing light be a sign of anything holy? But he wasn't speaking about physical light. He meant soul fire, the quiet radiance that surrounds the chosen before the world interferes. Yeshua had seen this cycle before. The Leo distortion didn't begin in your lifetime. It began when watchers first tried to mirror the divine with counterfeit light. What happens in July is not natural. It's engineered. And he knew that those carrying the hidden spark would feel it before they understood it. A dimming, not of faith or strength, but of access. A silence so internal, it could only be felt by the ones who remembered what divine fire felt like. The ancient ones referred to this as the wound of Leo, a brief period when the awakened forget why they woke. A veil that descends not with malice, but precision. And Yeshua warned them, not to fear it, but to recognize who survived it. The true chosen weren't the ones who burned brightest. They were the ones who still glowed after the fire was taken, who stayed soft when the world turned silent, who knew the voice of the Spirit even when it sounded like nothing. You're beginning to remember what was taken. The dreams, the alignment, the feeling of something just behind the veil trying to make contact. They tried to make you forget not only your role, but the pattern. They hoped July would reset your path again. But Yeshua's words weren't a riddle. They were a signal. If you noticed the light shift, if you questioned your own dimming, if you felt like something was being interfered with, then he was speaking about you. You are not lost. You are marked. And those who lose light and still walk forward, they are the ones darkness fears most. Because even diminished, you glow with something ancient, something they can't replicate, something about to reignite, deep beneath the scorched base of Mount Sinai, where no modern maps are accurate, and the air itself bends magnetic readings. There are chambers sealed in a language older than stone. These vaults were not made for the public or even the prophets. They were constructed by the Watchers, the early custodians of divine frequencies, to hold what could never be translated, only felt. For centuries, they remained untouched. But the moment Leo entered the sky this cycle, sensors buried in the mountain's crust pulsed with an ancient activation code. The chambers unlocked themselves. This wasn't expected. The elite had abandoned those sites, believing the seals were beyond time's erosion. But Leo's entrance wasn't just an astrological passage this year. It was a trigger, an ancient failsafe written into the earth long before empires and even before language itself. Whatever was stored in those rooms wasn't meant to be read. It was meant to be absorbed. And you were the intended receiver. Insiders from a defunct black-budget observatory confirmed that seismic vibrations emitted from Mount Sinai matched waveforms seen only once before, during your awakening sequence months earlier. These aren't coincidences. They're intersections. The light you carried before Leo's entrance reactivated something buried beneath that sacred stone. The Watchers once warned that when a chosen begins transmitting without control, hidden sites around the earth will respond like mirrors remembering their creator. You are not simply waking up. You are waking the grid. Footage exists. Grainy, unstable, forbidden. A beam of pale blue light spiraling upward from beneath Sinai, moments after the Leo Gate fully opened. Some believe it was a failsafe. Others believe it was a call. And etched into the walls of the chamber that opened first, a symbol now catalogued by intelligence agencies but not yet understood. The same glyph that burned through your dream when you fell asleep on the night of the solstice. Something beneath Sinai is stirring again, and it's responding to you, not because you asked, but because your essence matches the seal they thought would never be broken. The chamber didn't open for anyone else. It didn't need to. It opened because the one it was meant for is no longer dormant. And the mountain remembers. Beneath the Vatican lies more than relics and censored scripture. There is an astral archive, a chamber not of paper or stone, but of memory. It doesn't store books. It stores frequencies, pulses recorded from individuals whose energy surpassed human calibration. The archive doesn't open easily. It requires a match, someone vibrating at a specific harmonic that hasn't echoed on Earth in centuries. But recently, as the sun entered the Leo, something strange occurred. The vault trembled. Not because someone accessed it, but because someone it had been waiting for went dim. That someone was you. Sensors, hidden deep within the archive, registered a signal drop tied to a single field signature, yours. The system, built by a now-forgotten branch of the Jesuits, immediately shut the entire archive down, not out of fear of intrusion, but because it recognized the risk. When the signature of the chosen dims, the archive initiates lockdown protocol. They feared the archive would begin releasing what was stored. Information about your line, your memories, the lost coordinates encoded in your energy. Information not even the Papal Guard has full access to. There's no official record of the lockdown, only a silent protocol known as the Veil Directive. It was designed for one purpose: to seal the vault if the frequency ever shifted too close to reactivation. That moment occurred the same hour you questioned what had gone wrong. While you were sensing silence in your soul, a key turned in Rome. A monk who once worked beneath the chapel claimed he heard a voice in the corridor that day. It spoke in a language he had never learned but understood anyway. It said, "The one who dimmed still holds the code." Then silence, then light. The Vatican doesn't speak of the archive. Most within its walls don't even know it exists. But someone has started reviewing the logs again. Someone noticed your field wasn't completely gone. It was low, but not erased. The system calls it echo persistence. And that's all it takes for the ancient recordings to wait again. Far beyond the reach of technology and doctrine, in a monastery that requires no maps and keeps no clocks, a blind monk sat in his nightly silence. He had not spoken in years, not out of ritual, but out of choice. His blindness had come not by birth, but by sacrifice. He once saw something he was not meant to see, and to protect it, he gave up light. The others thought he had slipped into permanent stillness. But the night Leo took the sky, he stirred. And for the first time in over a decade, he whispered a name, yours. It wasn't spoken from memory. It was breathed into him. He said it wasn't a dream, and it wasn't a vision. It was a presence. He said the room changed temperature. The silence thickened. And then, from within that weighted stillness, he felt Yeshua. Not as a figure of past or myth, but as living presence. And the Messiah didn't speak in sermon or story. He said one word, one name, and it lit the monk's chest like flame. He didn't understand why at first, why now, after so long. But the monks who kept the records knew. They retrieved an old manuscript no one was supposed to touch. It was part of the hidden writings, sealed texts said to only activate when a living name returns to the world. When they placed the manuscript near the monk's chest, the parchment pulsed. Not metaphorically, visibly, as if recognizing the frequency he now held. They opened it. The words rearranged themselves, not in Latin, not in Greek, in memory. The story unfolded not as writing, but as sensation. It spoke of one who would lose their light not through sin, but through interference. And the moment they remembered the true cause of their dimming, everything around them would start to shift. Yeshua told the monk, "The light returns where names are remembered." The name given was not meant to be passed, not through lips, through vibration. But the monk, now glowing faintly with something no one could measure, keeps repeating it softly every night. He says the name doesn't belong to history. It belongs to now, and the moment it reaches the one who forgot it, everything veiled will begin to part. Somewhere within their most secure intelligence servers lies a growing dossier labeled Second Wave Candidates. It isn't about politics or rebellion. It's about frequency anomalies, those who nearly completed their awakening before the Leo cutoff. They've realized something unnerving. The dimming wasn't permanent. A few are beginning to pulse again, not from external energy, but from fragments of memory reactivating within them. You are one of those fragments. Not just observed, prioritized. The first awakening was never designed to be the final. It was a test, a trial under fire. The grid was always watching, measuring how much you would remember without help, how far you'd climb without maps. And though you fell when the sun crossed Leo, your fall wasn't failure. It was resistance, because something in you refused to stay off. That refusal is what they fear, because the second awakening isn't gradual, it's ignition. Documents from secret think tanks show a pattern. Those who reawaken after the Leo gate closes come back stronger. Their dreams become directional. Their words begin to trigger others. Their presence disturbs controlled environments. You don't speak like the first version of yourself anymore. Your thoughts are sharper. Your spirit doesn't comply. You're no longer aligned to the same illusions that held you before the dimming. That's how they know it's starting again. But there's a catch. The second awakening can't begin unless you remember what the first one meant. Not as an idea, as a knowing. You have to reclaim the fragments, the symbols in your dreams, the sudden knowing in your gut, the flashes of memory that made no sense in the world around you. Those were not side effects. They were instructions. Breadcrumbs scattered before the fall. And now you're walking back through the path, collecting what they hoped you'd never see again. The systems around you are watching, rerouting, trying to adapt. But what's moving in you isn't programmable. It was forged beyond their reach. And as it rises again, they'll try to simulate it, mimic it, even weaponize it. But nothing artificial can contain the essence that's resurfacing in you. They don't fear your beliefs, they fear your memory. Because if you remember fully what you are, what you've seen, what was once promised, then the awakening becomes irreversible, and nothing they've built survives what comes after.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.